I asked my audience of over 2.8 million followers across all platforms for fitness training questions, and in this video I'm going to answer the most common ones. We got over 10,000 questions. We've condensed it down into as few as possible, but these are the most common ones that people are getting stuck on. You need clarity, so that's exactly what this video is going to be. The first one that we got was, what rep range is the best to give me the quickest amount of muscle possible? So all it is 90% of your workload should be 6 to 12 reps if your goal is to build muscle solely. The reason for this is the last 5 reps before failure are known as the effective reps. These are the ones that really stimulate growth. So it's super important that you hit them without enduring loads of fatigue. This is why a lot of high rep sets doesn't make actual sense. Because if you do a set of 15 to 30 on a leg extension, for example, you notice you burn out mentally before you actually do physically. In reality with this, the way we want to work it is we want to do the majority of your reps between that 6 to 12. That is where you're going to get the most amount of muscle and the most bang for your buck. Next up, we have, what is the best pre-workout routine? There's no best routine, but the best analogy I can give you is you want to treat it like Ronaldo treats hitting a free kick. He always does the same thing. Routine is the key. There's a reason that teams perform worse whenever they go away to different stadiums. So Ronaldo, when he goes to take a free kick or a penalty, he does the same thing every single time. This is because it builds your body into flow. So what you want to do is experiment a little bit with different routine. Before I train, I have a bowl of about 60 grams of oats, a little bit of dark chocolate, around 10 grams. I have 2 scoops of whey, and I have some fruit. This meal works out around 600 calories. The reason for this is I just don't want to get hungry during training. I also find that some healthy fats slow down digestion, whereas most people will argue against this, but I find that I usually get hungry as the session ends, so some fats help slow that down, and protein's a great one. Then about 30 minutes before, all that matters to me is getting somewhere between around 150 to 200 milligrams of caffeine. This is usually an energy drink or a double espresso, for example. I notice this is enough caffeine for me. I get a lift, but not so much that I get jittery or nervous. The same with my food volume. I don't eat too much that I turn sluggish or too little that I'm hungry. This depends on you. If you're 100 kilos as a meal, you might need more food before you train. Or if you train early in the morning, you might prefer to do it fasted. The thing is, what you want to do is build a pre-workout routine that is like a ritual to you. Every time you do it, you want to ask yourself, how was the pump in my session? Did I get stronger in this session? Did it actually help me move forward, or did it hinder my performance? And that pre-workout meal, that pre-workout ritual can then be refined, because if you took too much caffeine and you notice you're stimmed off your head and you cannot actually perform as well as you wish, you can dial back the caffeine, and what you'll find is like a peak flow. So a really simple one, but it's actually trial and error, but that's what works best for me. How many exercises per day, per muscle group for me to optimize my muscle to the max? There's a bit of a law of diminishing returns whenever you work out. If you train a muscle group like chest and you're doing 6 to 8 sets in a session, they should be as close to failure as possible. And as a result of that, you shouldn't have much more left in the actual tank. Whereas if you are doing 20 sets for chest in a single session, what you'll notice is the first exercise is good, second's okay, the third, fourth, meh, and then you do some sort of finisher that gives you a pump. Optimally, in my opinion, you could hit chest, delts, triceps in one session, spread out your sets across the muscle groups, and hit them again later in the week. And what you'll notice is, because you're only doing maybe 6 sets total, you'll get stronger far faster week on week. And that way, when strength increases, volume over time increases quite drastically. Versus if you're doing 20 sets in a workout, what you'll notice is you'll struggle to get stronger week on week because of how hard you're hitting it. And as the exercises go on, you'll notice that it's really, really difficult to progress every single set, whereas every single set should count. Between 6 and 8 for most people genetically, based on research, is when it starts to become the law of diminishing returns past 8 sets. So that's why I wouldn't recommend much more than that per session. Now you might be asking yourself, but I don't have time for that. I don't have time to do 6 sets for my calves in every session I want them to grow. This is where you have to balance out what's gonna work for you and why a tailored approach makes sense. There's gonna be blocks where you might need to put more volume into your weak points, but optimally 6 to 8 sets for muscle group is all you need. How long should I rest between sets for growing muscle fastest? The general rule of thumb is actually the longer you rest, the stronger you can be with each individual set, and therefore get stronger week on week and build more muscle. The problem with this is you're not gonna do a set of chest flies and then wait 5 minutes. You don't have time for that. And as a result, you would only get maybe 10 sets in over a workout maximum. For bigger muscle groups that you do compound movements first, I would recommend taking the 3 minutes rest at least. And then on the smaller muscle groups where I think people do rush their actual sets and they try and beat through them for a pump, like arms are notorious for people taking 90 seconds, 60 seconds rest. And in reality, what's grown my arms the most is basing it off the research and taking 2 minutes between sets of curls, triceps, and actually even giving myself 2 sets for the likes of rear delts or lateral raises has made a massive difference for my overall strength and the amount of muscle I gain. And I had to base it off research. It actually almost hurt me because for a long time I was doing calves or delts or arms with only 60 seconds rest. Your CNS, your central nervous system, hasn't fully recovered, so you'll not be able to beat each set with maximal output. This is why you want to stay in flow off your phone and really focus on bringing the most to each individual set so you get the most growth. And you just want to work that in. And if you're thinking, well, how do I fit in as many sets for my workout if you're doing 16 to 20 sets? You're going to need to condense your work. Pick wiser. So remove some of your so-called junk volume and focus on quality sets over quantity, and over time you'll get stronger and build that muscle faster. That's the best way I would really recommend it. Now, one thing that I get asked constantly is, what is my current training plan? I'll give you the rundown of mine and the reasoning behind it. Whenever I program a split or my coach or me lay it out, it's usually focused around a weak point, and then the rest of the muscle groups are still getting stronger, still moving forward, but a lot of the volume will get driven in the weak point. It'll be the main focus of the block. So for example, for a long time period, until my biceps got brought up, they're still okay. They were the main focus. That's why for a long time period, you would have seen me hit biceps before legs on my leg day. And people always argued saying this was stupid, it didn't make sense. But it allowed me to hit them first fresh and really focus on them and actually enjoy my leg days. So what I'm doing now, because delts are my main focus, is I'm doing a pull, push, legs, day off, pull, push, day off. And the second pull and push days are different days to the first two. Now what I will do is on my push days and my leg day, I will hit delts along with one of the pull days. So 4 days of the week I'm hitting delts, and I hit them first on the pull day, the leg day, and then I hit them around the middle of the push days. The reason for this is because it means I can bring max intensity. The majority of the sets I'm doing are lateral raise variations with cables, dumbbells, machines, and then the odd shoulder press. So I'm driving a lot of volume in it, as I do think I want a little bit more width, and as a result my program reflects this. Now, is that the optimal split for you? Not necessarily. But you could take this and just play around with it and put biceps first on leg day, put biceps first on your push day, and all of a sudden you're hitting biceps twice along with your pull days. And as a result, you might only do 3 sets of biceps in each session. But the thing is, instead of cramming them 12 sets of biceps into the aftermath of your pull days when you're fatigued, you're tired, you're gonna get more bang for your buck because you're gonna hit them fresh, you're gonna be able to progressively overload easier because they're on different days. That's gonna mean your volume periodizes over time, and that's gonna trigger the muscle growth as well, which is magical and what we want. The next question I got is, why do you hate the bro splits? I don't necessarily hate them, but whenever I used to train a bro split, I never got the same results as when I moved to upper lower programs or push pull legs programs. And the research tends to back the fact that if you train a muscle group with more frequency, it will grow faster. So for example, if you hit calves once a week for 12 sets versus spreading the volume out across 3 different sessions, you will notice you're able to progressively overload more because the calf isn't as fatigued from the prior exercises. So what you're better doing is putting 1 calf exercise on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You can bring maximal intensity overload, and that's going to allow you to grow faster. That's one of the reasons why I don't like a bro split. Spreading the volume across the week is just a better method in my opinion. It just makes more sense. If I'm not sore, am I growing muscle? Absolutely. This is one of the main problems that we see is people change training block every 4 weeks. It's just a nightmare. The majority of blocks that have given me the most amount of muscle and clients I have has been from 12 to 20 week blocks of the same program. First 1 to 6 weeks of any training block, you're getting skill acquisition. If you haven't bench pressed or dumbbell pressed in a long time period, the first couple of weeks, you're getting used to the stability challenge. You're getting used to the actual movement again. So you're gonna see progression real fast. And then what you're gonna see is you plateau. And this is why people change all the time, because they feel like, oh, this program doesn't work anymore. What actually, in fact, you need to look at is your nutrition, your sleep, your stress, your total volume. And these variables actually add up more to the actual overall progress you're gonna make than what you're thinking. If you're hitting something like chest with 20 sets in a workout, the next day you might wake up sore from the total volume, but over time your body will adapt to that and you'll no longer be sore. And this is the same reason that people change training plan, because when you change movement pattern, you get that DOMS effect, delayed onset muscle soreness as well. And they think that this is the stimulation of growth when it's not. There's not really any correlation there. So don't think just because you're sore, you're on to more growth. You actually don't want that, because it means you're not recovering from session to session. The fresher you are for each session, the more weight you can move, the bigger, stronger you get, and it's just a beautiful process where you just look better and better. What's up with everybody just using machines and no free weights? Why do they get a bad rep? So look, as I said here, the skill acquisition of a movement whenever you're doing free weights, for example, if you're dumbbell pressing, you now have to stabilize the joint as you press. So the first couple of weeks, you will always get that big increase of strength because you're actually gaining the skill acquisition movement. So you're gonna overload far faster. The problem comes whenever you hit that plateau, which usually happens to people somewhere between 4 and 10 weeks. That is when an injury happens during a training routine where you are maximally pushing the likes of a bench press. And this is one of the reasons why I like machines, because a lot of the time your ego won't take hold. You'll be able to actually control the rep better. You've got less of a stability challenge, and most people will actually lift a machine slower. And as a result, when you lift slower, you don't use the tendons and ligaments as much. So you tend to slow down, pause, explode, because you're not as worried as what people are looking. You usually don't have as big as strength targets on these movements, but most people injure themselves going for like a PR or a 1 to 5 rep on the bench press, something stupid. That rep range is just promoting injury. Don't get me wrong, if you're a powerlifter and that's your goal, that's absolutely fine. And there's nothing wrong with low reps, but I just feel like a lot of injuries occur during that rep range. Other variabilities that come into that is the fact that you load the muscle better. The joint isn't really at a massive stability challenge. You can overload quicker in a machine because there's smaller increments. For example, whenever you move up 1.25 kilos, you very rarely get that in a dumbbell or a barbell. You'll have to move up like 1.25 each side. Whereas on a machine, if it's a pin, you can put on 1. If it's a dual chest press, you can put on 1.25 over the pin. Smaller jumps mean easier progression, means your joints, tendon, ligaments can get used to it. That is more beneficial for the overall goal of building muscle. Now, if you connect really well for free weights, you can use it. There's nothing wrong with it. If you enjoy the gym, and consistency is what you're all about, everybody's individualized, and this is where learning as you go is really important because you know what works for you. But if your muscle group is not growing, like try actually using a machine for 12, 20 weeks and see you progress far faster, because that's why I noticed. I love bench press, I love incline dumbbell press, but my chest always grew better on a machine. So that's why I use it, because my goal is not to bench press X amount of weight. It's to look a certain way. And for me, that's what's most important. I'm reading that cold plunge after training is good or bad. Clarify for me. You inflame a muscle by training it, and then you're removing all the inflammation post-training by taking a cold bath. So research is sort of backing that you don't really want to do this if muscle building is your #1 goal. I would recommend this only if you have to perform another sport relatively fast after. So like a soccer player after a match has a match on the Wednesday, the match finishes, they get into the ice bath so their legs are recovered for the next. They're not worried about building muscle, they're worried about performance the next session. You want to limit that if your goal is strictly adapting to the actual damage done and growing muscle. So simple as that. Don't do it post-workout. If you're gonna do an ice bath, do it like me, do it first thing in the morning, cold shower, and that way it wakes you up and it's not gonna affect your training. I hate leg days. Any tips to make them better? Take your weak point or your favorite muscle group to train and put them first on leg days. For years, I done biceps first, and then I done delts second, and then rolled in leg days. By that stage, you're also not only just physically warmed up, you're mentally warmed up, because there's nothing harder than going in for a leg day and your first exercise is squats. And this is where research and opinion and experience come into battle. That you should do your first compound always as the main focus. But I actually argue against this, because as you get stronger and as time moves on, it's very difficult mentally to go in and the first movement be squats or hack squat on a leg day or even bench press sometimes, and you be able to bring your A game. So for example, in the likes of a leg day, I'll hit biceps or delts first, do a seated hamstring curl to fully warm up the joint. And what this does is it allows me to prep mentally, beat my first 2 sets in hamstring curl, and I'm into flow for the heavier sets. And I actually notice I can lift more weight whenever I do this. Even on my second exercise, I can always lift more. And as long as your lifts are standardized the same place in each session, that's all that matters. How many days should I train abs to see them like yours that are blocky, right? I have quite thick abs, and this is just because I treat them like every other muscle group. You do not need to do some shitty bodyweight circuit to hit abs. You can do it if you want, but in reality, you just need to pick 2 to 3 movements a week, 2 to 3 sets, and overload them week on week. So for example, for me, I will do a reverse crunch lying on the floor. Second movement I'll do is a rope ab crunch throughout the week. Third is a weighted crunch variation. They're really the only 3 movements I do, and I would recommend hitting them hard. I think a lot of people throw them in like an afterthought. If that's the case, don't be afraid to put them first. And as usual, please be lean enough that you can see them, but the thicker they are, the stronger you get with abs, the higher body fat they will show it. That's one of the reasons why mine show quite fast, and there's always like a small outline. And if you're worried about blocky waist, just avoid stuff like side bends or things that block out your obliques, and just focus on really building the top 4, because they're the easiest to get, and then you can worry about the bottom 2 if you're lean enough, or if your genetics give you. Mine just sort of fade away to nothing. If you could only have 1 exercise per muscle group, what would you pick and why? If I had to pick for delts, it would be a dumbbell lateral raise. The reason being is I just connect really well with it. Research is also backing that there's not massive difference between cables and dumbbells. I love a lying down cable lateral raise or a dumbbell lateral, but the connection I get is so good in a dumbbell lateral, so that's the one I pick for delts. If I had to pick only one delt movement, it would be a dumbbell lateral. Moving on to chest, I would pick an incline chest press machine. The reason being is I just get such a good connection. I would like a conversion, like a dumbbell incline, because your chest is going to contract fully with your elbow wide and then coming across you, and everybody needs more upper chest, simple as that. If I had to pick for lats, I would pick a one arm machine row that's chest supported. Good stability, I can brace against it, and I can roll the elbow down deep, and I just find that so fucking good for a squeeze. Next up, if we had traps, I'd pick a T-bar overhand row. The same reason, I would want my chest supported so I could really focus on working it rather than a barbell row. If I had to pick for biceps, the best pump I get is probably an incline cable curl. There's nothing that gives a pump like it. Full stretch in the bicep, it's magical. I would say my biceps are built mainly off that. Triceps, an overhead tricep extension. See, doing it with a rope leaning forward is going to give you a big ass stretch in your tricep, and for me, not only do I get a good pump, but I notice my triceps grow so much faster whenever I have this in. Moving on to the likes of quads, I'd pick a leg extension. Not only do I get a great contraction, it's one of the only movements that fully pretty much contracts your quad, but you also get a big ass stretch, where in a lot of the other movements, you only get really stretched to mid-range, versus on a quad extension, you tend to get a bit more of a full range. Hamstrings, believe it or not, it'd be a seated hamstring curl. I just find that I can overload this. My hamstrings have grown so well from it. And if I had to pick one for calves, it would actually be a leg press calf raise. The reason being, you're stable. A standing one, I sometimes find my lower back because I'm lifting quite a lot of weight, and a leg press calf raise is just fucking magical. You want a straight leg, because a straight leg calf raise tends to be better for growth of the actual muscle on the outside. Abs, rope ab crunch all day. Last one, and the best one, is please give me your arm routine. This was asked quite drastically, and it actually made me extremely happy, I'm not gonna lie. There's only 4 movements I really do for arms, believe it or not. An incline cable variation for biceps for the lengthened position, a preacher curl for the shortened position of the bicep. I usually do this one single arm. I do an overhead tricep extension with a rope, and I also do a push down with a rope or cuffs. That is all I do. 3 sets between 8 to 12 reps, and I only do each once a week. So I only really hit biceps with 6 to 8 sets per week, and the same for triceps. But every week, I'm getting stronger, and that is what's grown my arms. And if you wanted additional growth, I would throw in another 2 to 3 sets before your leg days if you were gonna hit them, so you're hitting them fresh. That definitely helped me a long time ago. But that's the secret to my arms. They were pretty much like the 13 most common questions I got. It's just so much confusion out there, and hopefully that has cut through the bullshit. As usual, if I can help you in any way, please don't be afraid to reach out to me. And I hope you got a ton of value from that. Big love, I'll see you in the next one. I'm out.